and welcome to this edition of the full council, in which we consider basically our budget. I'd just like to say that we are going to be very strict on timings here, otherwise we could be here till midnight. And I don't want to be here till midnight. So we will be very, very strict on timing. And I have my marvellous Emma here with her splendid new timing machine. I think it whistles and whatever else, doesn't it? Two, it's got two. If we go on for quite a period of time, I'm going to suggest, if I feel the need, that we have a 10-minute break, comfort break, and members can go into the members' room and partake of some coffee and biscuits, I think, if you're very good. I now go to the agenda and I pass to Emma for apologies for absence, please.
Received apologies from councillors Fisher, Hynink, Housden, Seawood and Shires.
Thank you. The minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of December. The updated minutes were circulated yesterday and include the list of apologies, which apparently had not been included. Can I ask you just to raise your hand to confirm that these are all right? If this is a correct record, can you please just raise your hand to say that it's correct record? Thank you, that's confirmed. Items of urgent business, agenda item 4, there are none received as far as I know. Chairman's communications, which is me. Before we start, I have just a rather sad announcement to make. For those of you who can remember, Anthea Sweeney passed away on the 22nd of January. And I knew her, and she's a very nice lady. It was a great shame that she died. Anyway, we've all got to die, haven't we? But I mean, you know, I don't know whether she'd been ill. She had been ill. Yeah, it's great to say. She was a Liberal Democrat district councillor for Chaucer Ward from September 2005 to May 2015, when she stood down. She became a district councillor in September 2005, following the death of her husband, John, in July 2005, replacing him as councillor for Chaucer Ward. Anthea was a member of the following: the Scrutiny Committee, the Development Committee, and Licensing and Appeals Committee. And she was a Cabinet Support Member for Transport back in 2007-8. Councillor Gay would like to say a few words, and then I will ask for a minute's reflection. We will not stand, we will just have a minute's reflection. Councillor Gay.
All I'd like to say, Madam Chairman, is that Anthea was the kindest of friends. She was an absolutely first-rate councillor, and it was very brave the way she threw herself into a by-election straight after the death of her husband, and she will be very much missed by all of us who knew her and people within her village, and I know that. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Virginia. And now we'll just have a minute's reflection, just to give our thoughts to Anthea. Thank you very much. I believe I have some communications. They're coming up. This has been in, was it the January ones coming up? Welcome. Can't remember, I'm losing the track here. The what? February ones. This has been the least number of things that I've had to attend, so it's been quite an easy time. The Holocaust Day Memorial Service, that was really quite emotional on the 27th of January. And there were some moving speeches from our Jewish community. And I thought it was quite good that it wasn't just concerned on the Second World War, but it also looked at all the genocide and tragedies that have occurred since then. So that was a very moving morning. And the next one is the installation of the 40th Dean of Norwich. That was quite spectacular. Everybody dressed up in their robes, etc. And a very nice, again, a very nice service. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is to remind you to put your hands in your pockets for my charities. This will be the last thing we will be doing, I expect. We're going to have an Easter raffle, which I believe there's going to be some baskets made up and some Easter eggs and various things like that. And we're also going to have a bake sale, which we had before. Virginia and I were massively tempted, Virginia especially, by Steve Hemm's sausage rolls. I have to put that in. That is one particular thing, Steve. It's going down in my memory. She made a total beeline for them. Yes, Virginia.
I think I had the last one, Madam Chairman.
Did you
They
really?
were very popular.
But I will ask you, please, just to put some money into a tin or something, because they are extremely good charities. Now I'm going to pass to Tim for leaders' announcements.
Thank you. Friday, the 24th of February marks the anniversary of the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine. The Council will be reaffirming its solidarity to the people of Ukraine by taking a moment's silence at 11 a.m. Alongside this, the Ukrainian flag will be flown at full mast for the duration of the day. The pier will be illuminated in blue and yellow on Friday to Sunday evening. We cannot imagine what all those people are going through this time and have gone through previously, but I'm so pleased that North Norfolk has been so hospitable to so many who have escaped the conflict, and I'm sure that will continue as long as it takes. Work is still underway at a number of assets, including Cromer Pier, various areas of North Walsham, of course, including the public toilets being replaced, and now the getting famous Crinkle Crankle wall at Fakenham, to name a few. However, I wanted to highlight a project completed at the Sheringham Little Theatre, where our estates team assisted the organisation to carry out a brilliant refurbishment over the winter, and to which we contributed financially. It is clear that place is so important for residents of Sheringham and far beyond, and so much more than just a theatre. And I applaud everyone's work in making that happen. We will, of course, be marking the completion of the tree planting activities in March. That's the 110,000 trees. And once again, I must compliment all of the staff members involved who have really been fantastic ambassadors for the council, reaching so many different communities with this project and in raising awareness of the climate emergency and the challenges ahead. So many people have volunteered for those activities across the towns and villages. And I must also mention the very wonderful Muddy Boots conservation events taking place under the direction of staff, and do try and find time to head along to one of those events if you can. I'm continuing to engage with Serco, at least on a weekly basis, in respect of missed bins and other problems. Whilst numbers have been coming down still, I am still far from satisfied, and there are still impacts on residents, businesses, and of course our own staff who deal with calls and reports of these occurrences. I am pleased that the number of repeated missed bins does seem to be now abating, but I won't be ceasing my own involvement with these issues until such time that the numbers reach our expectations. As an update following the business completed at the previous full council meeting, you recall we had the item that started as opposition businesses on the ring frisbees. Myself and two members of staff are due to meet again with the Friends of Horsey Seals and RSPCA East Winch. Communications have also already been published, and we look forward to progressing that work and keeping you informed. We've also had an initial meeting with Anglian Water and the Environment Agency, and then Norfolk County Council Highways in respect of the loss of blue flags at Munsley, East Runton and Sea Palling. Finally, there's little that's been left unsaid about the outcome of the levelling up bids, but again, I wanted to thank those here and within those two communities who contributed so much to those efforts. We are still awaiting feedback on the unsuccessful bids, and the authority will consider options if indeed we are invited again to submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Now, before we move on to the main business of the agenda, can I say, ask if there are any declarations of interest from, oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was very happy when you agreed to reinstate prayers at the beginning of full council meetings. May I ask why we haven't had any today?
I will ask Emma to answer that one, but I think there was a problem with timings and costings. So Emma, if you'd like to just come in on that.
Yes, I did email members. I've just asked for a bit more time to look at possibly covering costs for vicars and members of the clergy travelling to meetings, because obviously there is a cost implication. We've always just expected them to turn up for free, and also to look at options around possibly allowing them to join us remotely. So I just wanted a bit more time to explore that. But yes, it is still there. It's a live matter that I am working on, so you can bear with me. Thank you.
Is that all right, George? Now, can we please go to the declarations of interest from members? Are there any on the items on this agenda?
Thank you, ma'am. I believe I've got pecuniary interest in item number 10, so I'll be abstaining on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I should just mention that I am a retired member of Unison. We have we have two members of Unison speaking next, so I'm just declaring that I am a member. I was a member. Anybody else? Anything to declare? No? Yes.
Well, if you're declaring that, I better declare it as well. I'm a retired member of Unison.
Yes. Just clears the air, doesn't it? Right. Now, the next one, public questions and statements. And we have two registered public speakers, and welcome to our council meeting. You have 3 minutes each. So if you'd like to come up to the chair, if you wish to, you don't have to, but we'll get the full blast then through the microphone. Could you just introduce yourself, please?
Hello. It works.
It does. That's lovely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name's Martin Booth. I'm the Secretary of the Norfolk Trades Union Council. I'm also a retired member of Unison, so joining a club here. So the question relates to a few questions which relate to the Serco, an impending dispute involving Serco and refuse collectors. So as the council is presumably aware, there is currently a dispute involving refuse collectors in North Norfolk, currently employed by private contractor Serco. We understand that these workers, who are highly valued by our community and who work tirelessly through the pandemic, are currently being paid at or not much above the minimum wage and have been offered a rise far below the current rate of inflation. Clearly, any dispute would have a serious impact on this vital service. So as a contracting authority, we would like the council to address these questions. I've got 4 questions. 1, as a single contract covers 3 local authorities, including North Norfolk, how much autonomy does this council have to intervene in any dispute that would settle things for workers in North Norfolk if the other councils, Breckland and Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, resist such a conciliatory approach? Secondly, given that waste contracts are being taken out of private company hands in nearby local authorities, including Great Yarmouth Borough Council and East Suffolk Council, can NNDC explore this as an option so as to take back direct control of services which North Norfolk residents rely on? Both councils have or are setting up their own local authority trading company. Thirdly, have the council's political leaders and or officers met with the workforce to get an accurate picture of the feelings amongst the workers they have a responsibility for as commissioner of the service? We know that they've met Unison officials, but at the time when we put the questions in, they'd yet to take up the offer to meet with local union reps at the Aylsham depot. I understand that perhaps there is some discussion about that, but which we'll follow up on. But that's one of the questions. And fourth, does the council have the ability to increase the budget on this contract to ensure that the North Norfolk element of it pays the real living wage? Or would the council have to wait until the contract is re-tendered to be able to stipulate this as a requirement of the service provider? So those are my questions. I should just add, as of today, I've been informed by Unison, the union representing those in dispute, that there is a live ballot for industrial action, which could be triggered at any point with 2 weeks' notice, and unless an improved offer is received. And as of today, no such improved offer has been received. So, you know, we could be heading into a strike of refuse workers here in North Norfolk very soon if this isn't resolved. So I do hope that the council as a contracting authority is able to look at this and see what can be done to try to stop that from happening, because nobody wants that to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. If you'd like to return to your seat. We have a second.
Can I respond?
Can you respond to that one then?
Yes, that's all right. Before,
Well,
David, take a seat,
David
and
can come to you.
I will respond to Martin first of all.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. We do take this matter seriously. Serco, our provider, we're of course not responsible for labour relations on their behalf, and whilst officers have been in contact with Serco during the pay negotiations, and as you mentioned, we've spoken to Unison, it's not appropriate for us as the council to steer or dictate the offer that the contractor makes to its employees. I understand that the King's Lynn depot has accepted the earlier pay offer, as indeed have the GMB. The revised pay offer made by Serco was benchmarked with other waste contracts, and compares favourably with other contracts in the region. Based on the pay offer shared with us by Serco, the increase is actually above the rates of inflation and backdated to April 2022, and this would see Serco employees on rates above the living wage. Secondly, you mentioned the taking the company, setting up an in-house or setting up our own trading company, etc. It's not the space we're in. I think you're all aware I have my frustrations with Serco, but it's not the space we're in. It's not necessarily related to this issue at all. The three councils have a contract with Serco for some time to come, so it's not something we can explore at this time. We have met, of course, with Unison, and our staff have been in the depot quite regularly. I of course would welcome a further meeting to discuss issues, but I'm aware that staff are taking an opportunity to visit again next week. And I believe the final question was, does the council have the ability to increase the budget to ensure that NNDC element pays the living wage? So I've sort of answered that to a certain extent. The offer made by Serco it is above the real living wage levels, and the council undertook a procurement process in 2019, which led to the award of the contract to Serco based on a tendered submission. This contract sets out the basis for the bid submission, how the contract and how the contract inflation based on the indexation related to the number of factors is calculated. It's possible to vary the terms during the contract period, but it would have to be agreed by all councils involved in the contract. I'm happy to meet and have a further discussion with you, Martin, if that would be valuable. Thank you, David.
Can you hear me?
I'm David Russell and I am the Vice Chair of the North Norfolk GUC, but I am a member of Unite, the union. I've been a union member for some 60 years. I'm here to lend support in the dispute for better rates of pay for Circle refuse collectors. For those who are not aware of why the trade unions are balloting their members for strike action, then this is what it's about. Currently, rates and offers by Circle are as follows. Heavy goods vehicle drivers receive an hourly rate currently of £11.50 and have been offered £13.50. 7.5 tonne drivers currently receive 11.82p per hour and have been offered 12.75 per hour. 3.5 tonne drivers currently £11.20 being offered 12.25. Operatives, loaders, who's operating out of Elsham Depot currently £9.50 per hour, offer £11. I wonder how many of the council would go to bed for that at 4 a.m. in the morning. It is my understanding that the council have been in discussion with Circle about this issue, but it remains unresolved. Would the council officer responsible for the monitoring of the contract, or indeed the council leader, explain why this is so? From a personal experience, my bins were emptied regularly and on time on a Monday, prior to the revised collection times. Now it is collected at unpredictable ones on a Wednesday. I consider the council's responsibilities are twofold: to ensure bins are emptied as per the contract with Circle, to monitor this frequently to ensure this happens. Circle and the council cannot lay blame on the workers for this state of affairs. They can only be as efficient as they are planned to be. If Circle are not complying with the terms of the contract, the council must have a clause in the agreement for their termination and take on the refuse collection service themselves. So why don't they? Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, David. I think two different issues there. There are the possibility of performance-related deductions if the provider isn't meeting the specification of the contract, but I don't connect the two per se. I think the question I haven't been asked, which I'm not asking myself, is do I support the staff at Serco seeing an increased salary? And I do. It's right that given the national context, the level of inflation we've faced that affects councils, households, that there should be an increased pay award. So I hope that there's the opportunity for ongoing discussion and that we can see a resolution to this, and obviously anything that I can do. But I do stress they are not our staff members. They are our providers, and we are not responsible for labour relations. But once again, extending the same offer as I did to Martin, I'm happy to meet with you, David, in the North Norfolk TUC to discuss the matter further.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you to both of you for coming along to this meeting. You're very welcome to stay if you'd like, or you're very welcome to go. It is quite a long meeting. Can I, before we go on, just remind everybody in the room to turn off your mobile phones or turn them to silent, please. We normally have one that pops up somewhere along the line. Now to item 8 on the agenda, recommendations from Cabinet on the 6th of February 2023. These need to be voted through independently, but we don't need a proposer or seconder. I believe this is over to you again, Tim. This is the Tim Adams.
Yes, even I'm going to be fed up with my own voice by the end of the evening. I won't talk after the meeting, I don't think. I'm happy that it's an accurate reflection. So you say I can't propose en bloc, but I propose individually that they are accepted.
Thank you. Can we go to Councillor Barber, would like to make a comment? Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on this particular item, before we go to the vote on it, this is just for some clarity for members here under D, fees and charges 23-24, subsection C. It says that there is added to Appendix A a provision to permit the Holt market to operate with a single street market fee at such amount delegated to the Director for Communities until such time as the street trading policy is approved. I wonder if the leader could give some clarity, particularly to the market traders of Holt, that they will be able to afford to continue this important economic function and prevent them. At the moment, they're paying around about £80 per stall, and they need to, which is not viable. And I wondered if there's some reassurance that this amount will be substantially reduced. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Tim.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, I'm pleased you've asked the question. It's important to you. It's important to us as well. Of course, I can give that reassurance. We want to try and make this as simple as possible until the new street trading charging regime, which is yet to be subject to consultation, and that will be coming to the parish and town councils and to you as local members. But that is some way away. But in the meantime, we obviously want these events, these wonderful events, to be able to take place and hopefully keep it nice and straightforward. So that's exactly what we've agreed to do. And I wish it every success.
But Madam Chairman, yes, thank you for that. But the important thing is that, of course, is that Council and Cabinet and the various officers there take cognizance of the fact that £80 per stall is far too much, and it needs to be something more like £15 or £20 per stall to make it a viable event. So I'm asking that some cognizance is taken of this going forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be a single fee for the whole event rather than a single fee for each individual stallholders until such time it's agreed. I know there's been a discussion about the so-called charter, but no one can lay their hands on it, unfortunately. If anyone does, come speak to us.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Oh, sorry, Councillor Heyman.
Thank you. Just a question really on, and I think it sits within 4.7, where you talk about commercial assets and income generation as being one of the primary purposes for holding an asset. And I did bang on about this when I was on Cabinet, but I do think one of the other important and perhaps overriding factors is community benefit from our assets. Are we leveraging the assets that we hold or that we let on peppercorn rents, etc., to other bodies to ensure that they're delivering the maximum they can for the community benefit, particularly in these difficult times? I'm aware of some assets which are really underutilized, and I do think the council needs to bear down on assets which could be delivering more for the communities they live in at different times of the day to different sections of the population, so that they really work in the best interests of everyone.
This is page 28 of your agendas. Tim, have you anything to say to that?
Well, yes, I do feel there are some good examples where we're working with the community and the community are delivering a function. Obviously, I mentioned during my announcements the Sheringham Little Theatre. There's a relatively recent example in Cromer of the Cromer Art Space, of course. That was an empty property for some time, the Art Deco cafe on the West Prom. There are remaining empty properties. Some of them are challenging and it will be difficult to fill because of problems with the buildings, etc. But I'm fairly happy that we've made some strides forward during this administration to do that. And I think whenever there are opportunities that exist, when someone submits a bid for a property, I hope they're considered on their merits, really, because some of these organisations do provide far more for their communities.
Can I just interrupt a second?
Yeah, of course you can.
I wasn't meaning necessarily empty ones. Of course, those are important to get into public use. I was thinking about ones where we already have existing arrangements to particular bodies to deliver. And there is a feeling with some of them that they, and I certainly felt that at the time when I was responsible for assets, that they really weren't delivering. So where we've got contracts for buildings and other facilities that are being used by perhaps one type of community group, but they're not using it and they're not making it available for other sections of the communities at the times that they're not using it. So they're sitting idle. So they're not being leveraged to deliver their maximum potential for the community. And I just think it's beholden, and it's not, I'm not making a party political point. It's just, I think a point about, can we make our assets work for us, for the community as much as possible? But I'm really pleased with the examples that you mentioned, because great work has been done on the community, the art space in Cromer, for example, and some other things which are being brought on stream, but it's making the others work as well.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Well, if you could perhaps write to me and, give me some examples, we can have a discussion about that and we can see what we can do. I can't think of any examples, but I'm happy to look at that further, obviously alongside the portfolio holder when he's back.
Thank you. So are there any other questions on this particular agenda item? I beg your pardon? Right, so can we go to agenda item 10? So
We're voting on
the whole lot, yes, yeah. Which is section A, as Cara has pointed out. You'll see that overview and scrutiny supported this recommendation. We don't need proposer or seconder, but we do need a hands up or vote or so whatever. So recommending in favour of this one, amendment A. Unanimous. We now go, thank you for that, to section B, investment strategy, 2023-24. Overview and scrutiny supported this recommendation at its meeting on the 25th of Jan. Can I ask for recommendations in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Then we go to section C, Treasury Management Strategy Statement 2023-24. With this is the overview and scrutiny supported this recommendation again at their meeting on the 25th. Can I then ask for your hands to say whether you approve? Unanimous. Unanimous. And then we go to section D, which is the last section on this agenda item, fees and charges. The overview and scrutiny committee supported the recommendations A and B at the meeting on the 25th, and recommendation was C was agreed after the O&S meeting. So I think it was a discussion that was had.
It was agreed at cabinet on the 6th of February. So it came as an additional recommendation to cabinet.
Are we okay now, Eric? Right, so can we then please again go to a show of hands, those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Now, Nigel, over to you. Recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Councillor Dixon's to speak on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Happy to be able to assist you expedite the agenda this evening. There are no items to report. Thank you.
That must be one of the quickest. Thank you for that. And I think it just shows that these items are discussed fully at Overview and Scrutiny, and commend you on leading that particular, can be quite difficult committee. We now go to item 10, agenda item 10, rate relief.
Sorry to interrupt, but I was just
That's
wondering if any of the people at the back would like an agenda copy so you can follow what's going on, because you're probably wondering what we're doing. So I'll just come and do that for you.
Right. Just settle down for a second, please. Item 10, rate relief policy, and Tim, it's over to you again.
Rate relief policy.
Yes, I've just said rate relief.
Yeah, okay. So this reflects all of the changes that have been implemented for the upcoming financial year, and I wish to thank staff for their assistance in, of course, dealing with queries from proprietors that have arisen to us as members. I know members raise these concerns or queries, I should say, on behalf of business owners from time to time, particularly when there are new changes in respect of the charges and rate relief, as there have been several in recent years. And I know that guidance sometimes, in fact, above and beyond our core responsibilities as council, sometimes is always very well received and very helpful. The rate relief increased by a further 25% this year, though of course rateable values will have also risen in many cases, and there is also a new small business relief which will be in place for 3 years. I am pleased to propose the acceptance of this. Thank you.
I thought you don't want me to repeat that, do you? No, that was the first recommendation. The second recommendation, Revenues Manager has delegated authority to make hardship relief decisions up to the cost value of 4K as indicated in Appendix C, and the rate relief policy is revised as indicated in Appendix A, B, and C. And you can see on the on this page, which is actually not, it's not on the actual agenda, it's before the agenda, that the new policy will enable the retail, hospitality and the leisure relief, supporting small business relief to be awarded, etc. discretionary reliefs in 2023, 24. I do need a proposer for this, please. Any who's proposed it? Councillor Adams, seconder. Councillor Kershaw. Could we have those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you for that. We now go to the main topic of this meeting. That is the budget and council tax 2023-2024, page 129. Now, this is going to be, I'm going to be asking for a number of recorded votes. And we are going to have quite a very strict time factor on this, because if we go the full gamut and everybody takes their full time, which they're fully entitled to, we will be an hour going through that before we get to even the main bit. So please, if those who have the entitlement to speak, please make it as brief as possible. So I'm now going to ask our S151 officer, Tina Stankley, welcome Tina to this full council, to speak on the robustness of the estimates. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, everybody, members, officers and members of the public. I'd like to present my opinion on the robustness of the estimates and the adequacy of reserves. And this is also included in the budget report at page 133, section 4. So in formulating my opinion, I've considered the 21-22 outturn position, the current forecast outturn position for 22-23, which is currently a deficit of £600,000 at present. But this is covered by the 21-22 surplus that members approved in September last year, that should be set aside to cover any 22-23 deficit as the inflation problem was emerging at that time, and it was felt prudent to do so. I've also considered the MTFS and funding that I think would be available, and the budgets that we will require for those future years. And I've also looked at the cash flow, and that has been monitored throughout this year and managed during the year to ensure that we have maintained the minimum liquidity levels that we need to, and have funds available should we have any need for cash and emergency. And I don't have any concern in this area that we won't be able to maintain it in the medium term at that level either. There is an established budget setting process here at North Norfolk, and it has been followed again here for setting the 23-24 budget, whereby the budget setting process began in the autumn of 22 to identify the base budget for 23-24. It was then updated with some assumptions around things such as increases in expenditure, particularly pay, increases in income in terms of increase in fees and charges. And then the MTFS was also prepared following on from the 23-24 annual budget setting process, and the same assumptions were used and modified in view of what we thought might happen in the future. I have to say that I think it is there is a greater level of uncertainty and risk in setting or the future projections of the MTFS, in setting those forecasts than in previous years, due to the long-awaited business rates reform and fair funding review outcomes, which are planned to be introduced from 25-26 onward at the earliest. And without any sort of information on these as yet, I've had to look at the information that I have available, and I've had to assume that funding levels will remain at similar levels to the 23-24 level, and look at the budgets as well, projecting forward assumptions on any cost increases. We've had a challenging year, and whilst there are many external factors that have impacted on the council's budget, I feel that the best assumptions have been made for formulating the budget with the information and advice to hand. Paragraph 4.16 covers the areas where there are higher risks, and these areas will be 4.16, and these high risk areas will be closely monitored during the coming year so that we can identify any variances early on and take any action that we need to mitigate the risks that we feel are there. I've looked at the capital programme, and it includes projects that are planned to go ahead over the medium term. And with the capital programme, we always identify the funding source beforehand and before it's included in the programme. So whilst there may be some cost pressures in terms of inflation, we do have the funding levels set there that we've assumed will cover the programme as it is at the moment. Appendix B within the report shows the policy framework that has been applied in determining the optimum level of reserves. And I believe that the general reserve can remain as it was last year at 2.1 million, and that this would be adequate cover for the risks that we're facing. The actual level of the budgeted general reserve is slightly higher than this, but I don't feel that it's excessive, and I feel that it is reasonable in the current economic climate. So in conclusion, taking everything into account on all the known factors that we have as laid out in section 4 of the report, and the policy framework for reserves, I consider that the level of the general reserve and the earmark reserves are adequate for the coming year, and that the budget presented for approval is robust.
Thank you, Officer Stokely. I now ask our leader, Councillor Adams, to propose the budget. This is just for items 1 to 9, as are noted in your agenda. You have a maximum of 20 minutes, Tim, to speak.
Okay. All right, get you home before breakfast. So here we are again. I am, of course, sad that Eric could not be here to introduce this budget tonight. I'm aware it was one of our 2 MPs, Duncan Baker, who has given the nickname to Eric Goldfinger due to his presumed ability to solve a challenging budgetary positions. So I think that moniker is appreciated, and it's certainly been a challenging process to develop the budget this year. But I am, of course, extremely grateful to all staff members and, of course, our relatively recently appointed Section 151 officer who have all contributed to the budget process in different ways, and, of course, the cabinet members who have helped guide this work. The priorities with the production of the proposed budget have been to retain the levels of service we provide as a council, particularly in supporting those increasing numbers of households who are facing hardship and other challenges, and in working towards achieving our net zero target. Despite the challenges and need to find savings without reducing services, it's my view that the proposals demonstrate the council continues to be in a stable position, recognising there has been little room for growth this year, given the national context that has been out of our control with the rampant inflation present. We have taken steps like reducing short-term borrowing to as little as possible, raising additional income and making far more use of resources, and to save where we can without impacting on services. Many other local authorities are in for a more challenging time ahead, and sadly for the sector, that is something we will see develop further this year. But stable governance, a strong officer corps here, and careful use of the ratepayers' money and other revenue during this administration has left us in a far more advantageous position to respond to those challenges ahead. We will continue to see far higher costs of procurement with inflation at 10%, but in fact, in some cases up to 40% inflation reported on some build projects in the region. And that has been a matter we have already grappled with when carrying out various high profile projects undertaken by the council. As you are aware, these impacts are on every area of household and council spending, and it really has been a dramatic year in terms of the national political context. However, the Treasury management advisors and economists are predicting the levels will ease in future. To ensure we are able to face further inflationary pressures, it is of course essential we maintain adequate reserves, and it's clear we're doing that within these proposals. We have seen little improvement in real terms in improvement in our position as a result of increases in government funding, and I believe £160,000. However, the reduction of over £800,000 from the new homes bonus is obviously very considerable. In line with the budget proposals, the increase in precept will only deliver an additional £200,000. We, of course, welcome the additional 3% funding guarantee, but this has to be seen within that context. Had that amount been less or not existed at all, we would have seen a considerable net reduction in government funding. Given the challenges faced by the entire local government sector, I hope the government will continue to reflect on these challenges and think about that funding. I know leaders of Conservative administrations have given a far stronger assessment of that issue, such that I feel I need to say little more. I have been working with Duncan Baker MP to address the shortcomings in the current proposal for the introduction of the new second homes council tax. And of course, this is analysed in future assumptions. We are ready to introduce this, but government is waiting until 2024. The district council benefits from just 8% of the overall council tax collection in North Norfolk, and this would apply to the new second homes council tax too, despite us facing the impacts of the proliferation of second homes as the Housing and Planning Authority. There is now at least a political agreement that the district councils should benefit from the largest share of this revenue, at least locally, rather than a minority, so that we can invest in truly affordable homes and address other impacts on communities arising from this issue. So I hope this local political agreement does translate in future to some changes with the national emerging policy and legislation. I am very grateful to residents who took the time to respond to our earlier consultation on council tax. As we can see, it has yielded a very balanced understanding, I think, of the challenges faced by local government, with many agreeing to the modest increase in council tax we are proposing. I'm heartened that those challenges have been understood by residents. In this time of great challenges faced by households, we are continuing to retain our level of council tax support, crucially, and the important services we have started, such as the community connectors, who have been extraordinarily well received and helped organisations such as Warm Hubs and others developed, and to connect communities to the support available around them. We have granted funding in the last financial year, the current financial year, I should say, to organisations helping residents with the Food Bank and Norfolk Community Law Service, both being among them. And we have developed our services for people and households significantly under this administration. And in this budget, I'm pleased to say there is £60,000 allocated to further develop the food hubs alongside Norfolk Community Foundation and the Nourishing Norfolk programme. There is already one, of course, operating in Wells, one opening in Sheringham, I understand, tomorrow, and a further coming in North Walsham and Cromer. I am aware of the capital budget refers to North Walsingham in error, just for clarity. It is also hoped that one can be delivered in Stalham. I know that's something that the Norfolk Community Foundation are looking at. With all of these projects, it's hoped to reduce the number of households reaching a point of crisis. We are continuing to invest in public toilet facilities. There's no reduction in this programme, which has been the most comprehensive in the region, with projects delivered in Cromer, North Walsham, Womack Stays, and work to deliver changing places facilities in North Walsham, Sheringham and Holt, of course, due to commence, and also Stalham in future. We are, of course, continuing to invest in temporary accommodation, repairs and maintenance of operational assets, litter bins, coastal assets, sports, and of course, carbon busting projects to ensure and secure our future. I therefore wanted to highlight projects that have now progressed such that they will be included in an amended capital programme with a view to delivering in future. These are the replacement toilet facilities at the Albert Street car park in Holt, with the inclusion of a changing places facility, the solar carport at the Reef swimming pool in Sheringham, which will enable the council to further reduce its carbon impact and, of course, reduce costs. It's also just the right thing to do with a new and successful facility, and that will be at a cost of £596,000. Next, I wish to mention the renewal of sports facilities at the Cromer Sports Centre, with much of the funding hopefully coming from the Football Foundation. Our maximum contribution will be in the region of £300,000. And the project is ready to go, but with a long lead time. Next, I wanted to mention, I understand the opposition did not manage to submit an amendment on time, but I wanted to address their proposal anyway, as I understand the intentions of this, and I'm sympathetic to the needs of sports and leisure facilities in Fakenham. This understanding, of course, by the administration having led to us submitting the bid for the Levelling Up Fund. However, a potential project in Fakenham in respect of a multi-use sports pitch will need to be scoped and assessed in future. The figure highlighted in the previous capital budget for sports facilities in North Walsham no longer progressing, will therefore be reallocated to sports provisions generally, and all of these matters which I've mentioned taken to Cabinet in future when they have progressed. So they will be amendments. Finally, I want to highlight that two of our parish councils, I should say, will be merging in April, which I think leads to all sorts of complications really, but this is putting Norton and Hempton, and there will be implications there in terms of the precepts in future. In conclusion, this is a robust budget designed to help households deliver net zero, as much alleviation of the housing crisis as possible, despite the overwhelming challenges that are largely out of our control, and contribution towards our tourism economy and leisure and sports provisions, with the ability to respond to the ongoing inflationary pressures. I'm very happy to propose this budget and, as you say, items 1 to 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I'm now going to ask for a seconder for the budget. Councillor Fredericks. And do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Or do you wish to speak?
Yes,
now?
please, Chair. I'd
You
like
wish
to
to
reserve my
reserve?
right to
Okay,
speak.
thank you. I now pass to the leader of the Conservative group, Councillor Cushing. You have also a maximum of 20 minutes with.
Lovely. Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd like to start by expressing my thanks to Officer Stankley and the finance team. I think she's done a great job in terms of you only been recently appointed into the role, and you've certainly been very patient answering the many emails I've fired at you in the last week or so. So I do appreciate that. I'd like to take the opportunity, if I may, actually just to welcome our guests behind me, who are some of the Conservative candidates who will be standing in the election in May. So give them a chance to actually see what the councils are like. And I have no doubt that in 3 months' time, they'll be sitting here in their own right as newly minted councillors. In summary, though, I'd like to start really by saying I think this is an extremely disappointing budget, as it really does very little to address the future needs of the council. This is the 4th occasion that I have responded on behalf of the opposition in my capacity as a leader of the Conservative group. In each of those previous speeches, I really drove home one point, that the economic outlook is bleak. And each of those forecasts is looking at impending shortfalls of many millions. In the first 2 years that I did that, I was actually astonished by the Liberal Democrat group's complacency on this. They didn't really seem to worry about it, just saying that there are always deficits forecasts, so don't worry about it. It was only last year that it was actually acknowledged that those storm clouds may well be genuine. And I think we've got to the stage now that they'll soon have thunder flashing overhead. And I contend that this Liberal Democrat administration has been asleep on the job, and I think that will have dire consequences for the future of delivery of essential services for this council in the future. I'm going to start my analysis by saying that I'm pleased to note that the council has come up and offering a balanced budget this year. I have to say, though, I'm not convinced of all the fixtures and some of the assumptions made in order to achieve this. For example, in there is stated that the pay award will be based on 5% as inflation is predicted to fall markedly later this year. However, I and others attended a joint staff consultative forum 2 weeks ago, and this is the forum which members of trades unions attend. And there we were informed that the 3 local government trade unions will be presenting a pay demand this year of 12.7%. So if anything approaching this figure is actually agreed upon, it will have a severe impact on the budget for this next financial year. In order for us, the council, to balance the book, the administration has come up with a list of savings and some increases in income. Well, I'm happy to endorse that approach, but I have to say I do wonder why it's taken 4 years to actually do it. In the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, we were presented with a table of these, which ran to actually 56 line items. Now, to my mind, the likelihood of all 56 of those landing, which is what you need in order to balance your budget, is probably so unlikely to actually be to the point where I think you can probably assume they won't do. We're all familiar with that term, sort of hope for the best, but plan for the worst. But I do think this is very much a budget which is actually very much hope for the best and plan for the best. And I've got a feeling that reality will bite and grief will follow. I'll mention the council tax, if I may. I note that this is the 3rd year out of the 4 that the Liberal Democrats are proposing to increase the council tax. At this point, I'll read a quote from a Broadland district councillor concerning their authority's council tax. Every little tax increase hurts. This year, sense has prevailed and all councillors have agreed to a tax standstill. Well, I can see that doesn't go down very well with some of the members opposite. Well, that actually was said by Councillor Dan Roper, leader of the Liberal Democrat group at Broadland District Council. Of course, the Conservative administration at Broadland is not putting up the council tax as they want to help residents. And that's what I'd expect from an efficient Conservative administration. I know you compare Broadland with North Norfolk. The Broadland average Band D council tax is £129.91p, whereas in North Norfolk, once this increase goes up, assuming it goes up tonight, it'll be £163.63p. That's a huge difference. And Broadland, I might add, actually offers a far wider range of services, certainly collecting kitchen waste, which is something that was been on the North Norfolk's books for a long while. And the key point I'd make about this is that had the Liberal Democrats fixed the roof while the sun was shining, there would be no need to increase the council tax this year. The Conservative group have opposed every council tax increase that they proposed during this administration, and we can certainly continue to do so this year. Indeed, it was only last November that there was a full council motion proposed by the independent group not to raise the council tax. And it is clear that the Liberal Democrat support for the time was nothing other than a cynical move. But anyway, I won't steal Councillor Rest's thunder on that particular issue. I do accept when it comes to the point is made that there is a need for county council and police precept increases, but these are driven more by demand-led challenges like adult social care and so forth. So I can understand why those authorities need to do that. However, I believe a Liberal Democrat, this district council can do its bit by helping our residents by not raising its proportion this year. To repeat Councillor Roper's words, every little tax increase hurts. I will at this point just mention the Council Tax Support Fund, which I'm delighted to see that the government has allocated 203,000 to support residents in the authority, and I think that will potentially benefit over 7,700 people here. I will briefly mention the earmarked capital reserves. There is a considerable imbalance of capital spending across the district, which is a concern which I'd highlight. In the last 3 years, it's been heavily focused on 3 towns. North Walsham has had nearly 2.5 million, mainly for the Heritage Action Zone project to refurbish the Sound Centre. Crona has had over 5 million, most of which has been spent maintaining the pier, which we have a legal responsibility to do. And obviously that supports our tourist offering in the town. And Sheringham has had about 17 million to maintain the former Splash swimming pool and build the splendid new Reef swimming pool. Now, I don't begrudge any of that spending on those towns. I want to see all towns prosper, but there's got to be, I think, some fairness in this going forward. Fakenham, by comparison, according to my calculations, looking at the capital outturn, has had barely £500,000 actually spent on it, and that's why I do actually applaud what Councillor Adams said in terms of reallocating some of the money that is in the earmark reserve, which was put beside an artificial pitch for North Walsham, and reallocate that to actually at least was submitting a proposal to the Football Foundation for one in Fakenham. That was part of the levelling up bid for Fakenham. Some initial analysis work has been done on that, that I think would enable that one to move forward. That's not to say I wouldn't want to see artificial pitches also in Crome and North Walsham, because I do, so it's not an either and or suggestion, but I do think we've got some money languishing there doing nothing. I think we may as well put it to some good use on that front. I'll also talk about the medium-term financial strategy. Though it's not a specific mention agenda item, it's certainly laced throughout the budget proposal. In Appendix A, it is forecast that there will be a deficit of 746,000 in the next financial year, 24-25, rising over 2.8 million in 25-26 and 2.6 million in 26-27. Now, these are estimates which cause me deep anxiety, as it obviously threatens this council's ability to continue to deliver services to our residents. Liberal Democrats, I should remind people, took control of this council in November 2018. First 6 months as a minority administration, and since May 2019 as majority. They've had ample time to prepare for these forecast shortfalls. The council has two options in order to do that. The first is to make efficiency savings, which has consistently made no great effort to do. In the past 3 years, I can't really think of any significant savings initiative that has been brought forward, not one. And this year, they've only found some after a panic that they may not be able to balance the budget. The second is to generate more income. However, they've done little to help grow the number of businesses in our district, which should generate more business rate income. In 4 years, they've not even managed to draft an economic growth strategy, which explain how this could be achieved and where to deploy council resources to best effect. In the cabinet paper, they also say we need to take a more commercial approach, but there's no evidence of this. I have no more idea about what they mean by this than I actually expect they do. Also, they mentioned about increasing fees and charges. Well, most of those have been put up recently, and obviously there's an inherent risk that the more fees and charges you put out, the more uncompetitive you make our tourist offering in North Norfolk, which is obviously a key part of our economy. One area going forward that I believe has to be explored in some formal way is collaboration with other district councils. There must be a multitude of possibilities here in terms of sharing systems, services, working together more closely to find efficiencies. But beyond the Serco contract, I can't see that the Liberal Democrats have done anything to pursue anything like this. And that's the difference between the Conservative thinking and theirs. It's actually very much about what can we do to help ourselves. I know we rely on getting government grants coming in, but we need to look at ourselves. I think the picture for local government going forward is going to be increasing of tightening of belts, and I think it's incumbent on us to do what we can. So in conclusion, this budget is a testament to the fact that the Liberal Democrat administration, I do believe, had been asleep on the job and thoroughly negligent in doing nothing to bring forward proposals that might mitigate the challenging financial services this council finds itself in. And it's interesting, in Councillor Adams' speech, I didn't hear one of those mentioned at all. All they've done is sit back and hope the government will fill the predicted funding gap. Not only have the Liberal Democrats been negligent, they've actually made matters considerably worse with a degree of profligate spending. You saw the notorious capability review, which cost £30,000 and God knows how much in further subsequent investigations. We've seen several restructures, and we've actually seen a rise in staff numbers. I actually checked these. I've been keeping an eye on them in close over the years. In 2018, which is the last year of a Conservative administration, there were 280 FTEs employed by this council. As of this January, that's ballooned to 320, an increase of nearly 40. Now, I know some of those are being funded elsewhere, but that's not the case for all of them. Staff costs account for the majority of this council's revenue budget. The fact remains that the trajectory of staff numbers has increased markedly under this administration, with no perceptible improvement in service, as feedback in the streets largely testifies. And on top of that, I'd also say this council does have a dismal record in obtaining government grants compared to neighbouring Conservative authorities. There are examples of plenty in Great Yarmouth, Kingsland and West Norfolk, Broad and South Norfolk, where they've managed to secure tens of billions. North Norfolk under this administration has had hardly anything by comparison. In conclusion, I would say I do believe this is a budget bereft of ideas to see and determine how you can address the funding challenges of the future. I think North Norfolk deserves a lot better. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. I now go to our independent group leader, Councillor Rest. You also have 20 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't need 20 minutes. First of all, thank you to the Section 151 officer and her team for managing to produce a balanced budget. I'm just really going to sum up my own feelings and my group's feelings with one word, which is disappointed. You won't be surprised by that, I know, because on September the 21st, 2022, the independent group put forward a motion to this council appertaining to the 2023 council tax. We asked this authority to give consideration to freezing the 2022 council tax, which could offer some comfort to our residents in these difficult financial times. We are disappointed that, having read through the presented budget papers, we can find no evidence that this request by the independent group has been given any consideration. Therefore, unless otherwise persuaded by debate, the independent group will not support this budget. I'm not going to say anything else, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rest. I now go back to Councillor Adams, who will respond to the opposition group leader's replies. You have 10 minutes, Tim.
Okay, thank you. Well, Christopher, Liz Truss crashed the economy. That's why we're facing so much of the inflationary pressures we are. All of the additional cost pressures we are seeing have arisen as a result of inflation. There are no rabid overspends or pet projects. And we heard so many Norfolk councillors, including members of this group, suggest that we would be in a good position as a result of having a Norfolk PM. Yet to see any evidence of that. You say we have awaited government funding, but as I said during my opening remarks, we only got an additional £160,000. On wage rises, we are assuming 5%, and then that's the advice that all authorities have been given. There is room to do more within this budget, and as we've heard, 1% allows for 146. Well, would result in £146,000 of additional pressure. My view is that we will be able to meet additional pressures subject to this budget being agreed, given its robustness. So it's important that we do agree it. You're trying to trash a modest increase in council tax. Let's not mention the county council. And yet you raise concerns about the robustness of budgets and deficits in future. It's not a consistent position. Up here for thinking, down there for dancing, really. It's the opposition seem to have got too confused again. The public response to this increase was really very balanced, and I'm heartened by that. You mentioned Broadland particularly, but if you put North Norfolk on a league table of all Norfolk authorities, you'll find we sit very comfortably in the middle. I understand South Norfolk, I believe, maybe I've got it wrong, is the largest, but there's actually little difference between all of the authorities. John, we did consider the possibility of freezing council tax, but an awful lot has happened since then. the inflationary pressures have grown and grown. And if we do not do this, we will be building that pressure into ongoing budgets. We do have to make assumptions. We have 300 staff. Not one of them is Mystic Mech. So we have to make some assumptions about what's going to happen. Well, Christopher, you won't like this, but the council is working more effectively as a result of the restructure that took place, and it's more cost effective. It was the right thing to do. You asked about projects elsewhere in the district. You mentioned that we have many projects in a sort of central area of the district. Fair enough. I understand that concern. We have delivered a public toilet facility in Fakenham. We want to do something in Stalham. But the fact is we actually have fewer properties in the far east and west of the district, and much of the capital programme is on the renewal and repair of our existing assets. So I fail to see what you would do differently. And finally, why no amendments if you're both not happy? I understand the Conservative group hasn't submitted an amendment because I understand they forgot to do so within the timescales. I don't know if the dog ate it or whether you're distracted by Fair Maiden or a heavy night at the Conservative Club, Christopher, but it's something only you can explain to your group. We are delivering a robust budget here, fit to meet the challenges ahead as far as we can, retaining services, providing for the cost of living crisis, helping the local economy, improving and maintaining our assets, and working towards net zero. Thank you.
If you'd like to reply to that, Councillor Cushing, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'll start with the inflation. Apparently, Liz trashed the economy. I think after COVID, inflation was on the rise, which is exacerbated markedly by the invasion of Ukraine. So I think Liz Truss's very brief premiership in the long term had probably little to do with that. And I would actually point one thing is that the inflation in the UK is actually lower than the median average in the Liberal Democrats blooded EU as well, certainly lower than Germany and Spain and many others there as well. On a national scale, obviously, it's been a torrid time. You had, once in 100 years, COVID, then Ukraine. I think very few governments since the World War have had to face those challenges as well. And it's interesting actually pulling out that. When I've actually challenged Councillor Kershaw, why don't we have an economic growth strategy? It's always been, well, we've had COVID, this, that, and the other. So it sort of seems it's convenient for you to pull that one out when you want it and ignore it when you actually don't. You say you sit in North Norfolk sits mid-table. My view is the aspiration should be to sit top of the table. That's what a Conservative administration would look there to do. How can you get yourselves there? And I don't see any passion or any how you're actually going to get there. It's just really about what government grants can we get, nothing that we can actually do for ourselves. And you say that we have an efficient and effective council. Well, by what measure? And since I've been here, you could have had a peer review so a peer review for the benefit of our guests here is where you get independent officers and councillors from other authorities to come from elsewhere in the country and do an assessment on this council. You've had 4 years to do that, which give you a true measure of how this council is performing, yet you haven't done so. And that's something that certainly, I know that's probably actually earmarked to be happened in the future, but certainly something that a Conservative administration would have done, and would have done that as opposed to getting in a 30 grand consultant that you did at the start of your administration, which caused all sorts of grief and hassle, as we all know, in terms of doing that. In terms of amendment, well, I find it's rather pot calling kettle black, because I understand at the County Council budget yesterday, the Liberal Democrat group didn't submit any amendments either there. The reason we didn't put any full amendment in there because it's this: I think in order to actually review a budget, you need to have your hands on the levers of power. And if the council elections go as I hope they will this year, then our alternative budget will be this time next year when we're in charge of this organisation. And then we can see what we can do in order to put some initiatives forward that will improve what this council can actually do. I know it's on this particular point. I genuinely am concerned that you have done nothing in order to prepare for the future. Whoever wins in May is going to pick up a poison chalice from you in terms of doing that. And you may well laugh and grin, Councillor Brown, but it is actually true. And that is the concern I actually have in terms of that. At least I'm pleased to say that we have an excellent array of candidates from all sorts of backgrounds who will make superb councillors if and when they get elected in May, that can certainly work together in order to turn this council around. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Councillor Rest, you can respond to Councillor Adams' reply. 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Amendments. Well, I gave you an amendment on the September the 21st about don't increase the council tax. I mean, I thought that was pretty straightforward. The bit that sort of gets me is that you say about other amendments, there is no, you haven't put in an alternative. You're just going to increase the council tax. There is no alternative to how else you could have raised that money without increasing the council tax. I mean, the council tax, if I'm right, is around about the 200 to 50,000. Looking at the section 151 officer, are we looking at 200,000, Tina? Sorry, about 200,000. Well, I don't think it's beyond the wit of man to have gone through their budget quite nice, trimmed a bit here and trimmed a bit there. I mean, I've got a few suggestions, but they won't go down very well because most of them are around Chroma. And I know you like to keep Chroma to yourself, so I won't suggest how we can raise more money from Chroma. But I'm sorry, that was my amendment. It was ignored.
Thank you, Councillor Rest. No.
Can I just go on a point of order? I'd like to know about political campaigning in the chamber, if that's allowed. I believe there was a political campaign on behalf of Councillor Cushing.
My view is that there is a certain amount of political comment that is permitted. If you're making a point of order, if there's somewhere in the Constitution that you consider that that is not possible, then I will look at that separately.
Yeah, it's the fact that he's referring to candidates behind him. I don't have the Constitution in front of me, and that was why I was asking for assistance and asked if it was a point of order. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Torrey. Now, thank you for your comments to the leaders and to to Tim. I'm now going to open the debate up on the main budget to the members here. You have 5 minutes each to speak, and you can only speak once. Any member can speak during this part of the debate. So if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will be noting it down. Who was first?
The rest of first, Councillor Dixon's next, Councillor Tillett. I don't know which two of the gentlemen over there was next, but they're the next two. And we have Councillor Penfold.
Eric was next. Who else was it?
And Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
And then
Councillor Penfold. I'll put the list after that.
Yeah, please, if you wouldn't mind. And right, we're ready to start. Are we okay then with the timings? Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. So if I put them both together, it will count as one because they're both virtually on the same page. Page 163, if people would like to turn to that, would be helpful. Halfway down the page, near the bottom, it says communities. And I'll read you the statement that is printed, which says to support projects that make a difference to economic and social well-being. The balance in April 23 is shown as £294,776. The balance shown in April 27, 4 years later, has dropped to 19,776. That is a reduction of 93% in a project that says to support projects for the community. The second one, which I will be very quickly with, is on the following page of 164, and it's major repairs, halfway down, major repair reserves to provide provision for the repair and maintenance of the council's asset portfolio. As the chairman of GRAC, for the last 2 years, the GRAC committee have asked for a copy of this portfolio of where the asset register is and its value. And we are keep being put off. It's not ready. We can't do it. We haven't got the staff. So how do you know how much it's going to need for repairs? Thank you.
Who's going to reply to that one, please? Is that you, Steve, or is it Tina?
I'll attempt to answer if that's okay. So the Communities Fund is what was the Big Society Fund and was subsequently renamed the North Norfolk Sustainable Communities Fund. Historically, that money was funded through a refund from Norfolk County Council as North Norfolk District Council's share of the second homes money premium that could have been charged in the past. That arrangement came to an end a number of years ago, and a rolling balance has been maintained. That money is coming to an end, and under this budget, I believe the Cabinet felt that we couldn't maintain future provision or operation of that budget beyond this current financial 23-24 financial year. And so, as Councillor West has suggested, the balance drops very significantly from the 1st of April 2024. The leader referred in his opening budget statement to the thinking of government and the work that the council is doing politically with Duncan Baker MP to secure a larger element of that council tax premium on second homes moving forward, and the aspiration that I think is shared across the political sphere that that money should be spent on housing solutions because of the pressures in communities along the North Norfolk coast, particularly of the strong demand for second homes, particularly. In terms of the major repairs reserve, I will need to take that away and speak and establish the position in terms of the asset base. My understanding was that we do have a very robust asset management system, Concerto. The leader of the council has talked about the council's responsibilities about maintaining the council's assets and assets for which we have responsibility, including Chroma Pier. But recently, the investment that we're having to make in respect of a listed wall structure in Fakenham, in terms of our statutory responsibilities, but I will need to take that away in terms of the list of assets and return that to GRAC if that is okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rest. Councillor Dixon.
If I could just comment on the council's asset register, we have what we would probably call a traditionally a terrier, a property terrier, which does list all the assets, and we have that, and that is what the property estates and assets team use to go out and do inspections, and from that they would form their view on what needs to be undertaken in terms of repairs and maintenance. I think there's also an asset register within the finance team, the finance section, that we're required to keep for accounting purposes, and that is the one that is needs reconciling to the property terrier, so to speak. But we can provide that information to GRAC. Yeah.
Can I come back on? Can I come back just on that?
Very quickly.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you. The main concern with GRAC is that we've never had a valuation, any valuation total of what those assets are worth to this authority. So we can't compare what they're worth to what you want to, how much you want to spend on repairing them. Everything has got a value. We don't know what it is, and we have constantly asked. Thank you.
If I could just come back on that, Chairman.
Please do.
Yeah, we can provide you with the valuation that we currently have, and that is fed into the year-end accounts each year, so we can on an asset by asset basis.
Yes, thank you. And now we have Sorry, what is going on here? No, it's this,
Councillor Fredericks is asking to speak, but I believe there are other people first.
there are. No, sorry, let's just go through this as I have it down here. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
I think you said Councillor Dixon before me.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Dixon. I'm getting slightly out of kilter here.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's all right. I don't need but 5 minutes, by the way, so I'll be reasonably quick. I would describe this budget as high risk, and the root of that risk is that despite repeated requests and opportunities to prepare cost and efficiency savings and income increases, which would be contingency options, this administration has been complacent and done little apart from relying on a range of central government support grants. If this contingency work had been done, then the increase in council tax would have been avoided. And the motion that Councillor Rest spoke of would be recognised and complied with tonight. So the residents of North Norfolk have every right to feel let down by this administration. That concludes my address, unless you wish me to repeat any part of it. Thank you.
Our finance officer, legal officer had to leave the room because she is suffering from a rather bad after effects of COVID. So please forgive her. She has a very nasty cough. And she's not feeling at all well. So I think she's done extremely well to tip up tonight. Angie.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. On 21st of September last, as my colleague has already said, we independents asked that there should be no rise in the contribution to the cost of services we offer by way of council tax. Taking into account the cost of living rise, now much more of a burden than then, I'm extremely disappointed with today's proposal to implement that rise. A small part, though it may be, in the overall bills, which include Norfolk County Council and the police. I am aware that some relief from household budgets has been actioned by way of central government grants and voluntary help, such as food banks, but all of us in this room could do more. Now I'm going to go on my favourite hobby horse here. Looking around the chamber this evening, I can see reams of paper agendas. In 2011, I asked for a costing per member of printing and posting the agendas. It was £3,400 per year per member. Times that by 40. And I don't need to tell you how much costs have increased in the last 12 years. So we should all search our consciences, especially as we're provided with electronic devices to save trees, one of this council's priorities. And since COVID, many meetings take place virtually, so we are all tech savvy. That's just one little thing. And I'm sure if everybody in this room thought of one little thing, we wouldn't have had to put the council tax up. We are responsible and should think of the extra strain we are putting on our resident budgets and try harder. But we have to provide our statutory services, of course, planning, dustbins, etc. But there are far too many nice to do projects that I believe should not be financed at this time. I am sorry, but I cannot support this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Councillor Vardy.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm just going to refer to page 135, 416B, which talks about car park income. Now, some of this you might think, well, this is just a small bit, but when you talk about the assumption going forward that this will generate income of £3.04 million for this district council. And when he talked about what it's going to be spent on, it says on other services. Well, These are all, most of these car parks, like Holt, for instance, generates around about £500,000 a year income for this council for car parking. Now, this is an old hobby horse of mine, and I know that. But how much of that was fed back into not only Holt, but other of the major tourist informations which generate this income? How much is actually reinvested in those towns and places, villages where these car parks are to sustain that income and to generate and support the local economies? I think that what I would like to see is where it says other services, is to let's see what those services are that it's this income supporting. I realise there are budgetary constraints on this when you're moving from one capital to revenue and all this, that and the other. However, we can think out the box here. We can make things happen to support. It just seems to me that it's an opportunity missed, and I would like to see greater thought going into this area in the future. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Eric. Can I ask for a reply, please, from either Steve or Trace? Can you? Car park revenue, please.
So the car park revenue funds a lot of discretionary services that the authority provides. We are a tourist destination. Many of the services and facilities the authority provides in terms of enhanced cleansing, beach and promenade areas, blue flag beaches, RNLI lifeguards, Chroma Pier, but also significantly the provision of public conveniences in locations across the district is funded through car park revenues and receipts, rather than being a direct burden on North Norfolk District Council residents and council taxpayers. That is a significant difference compared to some other authorities in Norfolk, inland locations, which do not have such a heavy tourism burden. But in terms of our comparison with similar authorities, coastal authorities, we provide similar levels of service, and many authorities operate chargeable car parks from which income is derived to pay for amenity and services which are otherwise discretionary, and there's a choice over how many of those are provided. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Mancini-Boyle. Oh, Eric, we really shouldn't have you back again, you know.
Okay, well, this is very good. Thank you for that response, but I would hope to see that this is illuminated better for our communities, and that some thought is given to actually saying to them that, you know what, coming as a result of the car parking, some improvements have been made visibly locally. But thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I first of all say I completely agree with my fellow member about the paper. This is an item I've brought up in the past. Quite frankly, if I can use a laptop without paper, I'm sure most of us can. And the best part is, Madam Chair, my question has been answered.
Is that it? Quick, short and sweet. Now, I've just 1 minute, please. I've just been passed a note to remind members that if you leave the room during a debate and you then come back in, you will not be able to vote. So I think we've kept a note here of people who've left the room. So when it comes to the vote, that's it. Okay, it's the same rules that apply during Development Committee and the other committees.
Should members have been warned about this prior to the meeting starting, because it's come in rather late, and I'm just wondering if we can just adjust it so members in future who leave the room should not vote.
Can I just say that you should all know this, that any of you who are on committees know that if you leave the room when the committee debates are going on, if you come back in, or if you're late coming into meetings, you cannot vote. So we've got at least Three
Yeah, I
pages.
know that's true of development meeting.
No, it's not just development meetings, Harry.
But it's not,
any-
it hasn't been fully enforced in other meetings I have attended.
Well, that's up to the chairs of the other meetings, but the ruling is there. I'm going to ask Cara to say something here because I think Harry is saying we should have made them, we should make.
I think you've had the chair's ruling on this, and that's the position at this meeting.
Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yesterday at County Council, we had the Conservative administration vote through its workhouse budget, which offered a very thin gruel to the people of Norfolk. This included a 4.99% rise in council tax, whilst the Conservative administration there at County Hall is paying £90,000 per day on its debt interest alone. The Liberal Democrats didn't put up any amendments to that budget yesterday because we felt it was a broken budget and that it was unamendable. Several Conservative members criticised us over this, calling us lazy and that we must have agreed with their budget because we didn't put up any amendments. So how interesting, Madam Chairman, that the Conservatives here tonight at North Norfolk themselves have not put up any amendments to our budget. I wonder why. The word hypocrisy springs to mind. All I can conclude from this is that despite Councillor Cushing's earlier ramblings, the Conservative group here fully agrees with the budget that the Liberal Democrat administration has proposed for North Norfolk. And what they really think is that the Liberal Democrats here are doing an excellent job in running North Norfolk District Council.
Thank you. Councillor Troy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay? Is it working? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to advocate for the countryside, if I may, just briefly. We keep hearing about all the towns, what they get, and all the car parking charges and where they go and where the people benefit. 40% of the people in North Norfolk live in the countryside and not in our towns. And I also noticed that in the, I've lost the page now, yes, where the government funding has come from, even they've acknowledged that there is an increase in the rural services delivery grant, even though it's a small amount, whereas the 3% funding guarantee has gone down, which has kept the figure the same. So I would like some assurances that as we move forward and, you know, we've put this extra money into sports fund, that the countryside, the 40% of our people that live in the countryside will be considered with any projects in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fredericks, did you want to speak? Because I saw you waving your arm earlier.
I was just going to reply to the North Norfolk Sustainable Communities Fund and the funding going forward of that. But if you're interested in that, Councillor Rest, that we're taking money from the UK Prosperity Fund and putting it into that fund. We're also working with other funding agents. So I met with Grantscape today, who have very similar criteria to us, and we were talking about much funding as well. So yes, it is a little bit less than we're used to having in the pot, but we also have money rolled over from other years. So I want to ask our communities to still come forward, still put their funding bids in, because we really want to help the communities. Also, I'm sorry I had to go to the loo. I'm in menopause at the moment, so that's why. So thank you.
Yes, I think we have to sort of just realise here that sometimes people do have medical reasons that they need to go off to the loo. So I'll ask Cara what we can do about that, because we never know. It's usually the men who have to go off at some point, but they seem to be okay this time. But Councillor Stenton.
Thank you. I've got a very brief question. I would like to know why the budget questions are being answered by the officers, not by the administration. Thank you.
They are the administration. Sorry, what member, what one are you talking about?
Well, the chief executive and
section 151 officer did answer questions, for example, John Rests. And I would like to know why the administration did not answer that, yet the officers did.
Tim?
If you're asking for that level of detail, in terms of what we're doing, sometimes if you're going to ask a question like that, you're going to get a reply from officers. That's not atypical. No questions have been put to me in the last few minutes, but if you want me to ask a question, fire away. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's not a particular question I would like you to answer. I would like the administration to be able to answer the questions that we put in front of them. It's not just tonight. It happened to me in the past, whether in this chamber or via Zoom, and my questions have been answered by the officers, not the members. And maybe that's a question to monitoring officer as of why that happens. Thank you.
It's about Councillor Stenton is saying that the members of the cabinet, etc., are not answering the questions that are being put. And Councillor Adams has said that at the level of the questions that are being proposed are above the level of knowledge that our
Can I just
members.
clarify? I also said no questions have been put to me.
No, and no questions.
So, I mean, if a question is asked of me, then I will answer it.
If you can.
It is usually members that respond to questions, but where a question involves a certain level of detail, especially technical detail, members do often refer it to the officers with that special expertise.
Thank you. Tom?
Sorry, I thought loads of people in front of me. Yeah, thank you very much. It was very good of. I'm glad that the proud boast of being recyclable council has done it. No offence to Councillor Penfold, but I thought his gruely speech was quite thin yesterday. Recycled today, I'm afraid it's not really sort of improved with age. So all I get from this, it's all Liz Truss's fault, really. So council's not really done much in the past 4 years apart from increased staff. But I'll answer Councillor Stenton's question about why officers are replying to the question. It's because actually this is not a member-run council, it's an officer-led council. And I think that's just been proven tonight. But more importantly, tonight's budget. So some councils have a very, very definable centre, whether it's Great Yarmouth, the town of Yarmouth is its centre. Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, it's Kings Lynn. We don't have that. This is a very dispersed area, but the one thing that is not dispersed is where the money in this council is spent. Because it's spent effectively on the Cromer area, Sheringham and North Walsham. And everyone feels I've got a bee in my bonnet about Cromer Pier. Well, I do, because it costs everyone in this council, everyone in this area, cost everyone last year, whether you were 90 years old or 9 hours old, it cost you £13.20 to do the year-on-year repairs. And it's always, it'll make it fit and preserve it for the future. I know fighting, it's a bit of a political graveyard. I bear the scars and I'm probably the corpse of that. But there, what happens in Cromer, and it's here, it doesn't benefit where I live. It doesn't benefit where a lot of these other people live. The Easties and the Westies, we don't get benefit from what happens in this area. And I was very impressed the work our staff did in Sheringham Little Theatre, but I seem to remember that was set up to be looked after, although it was council owned, to be looked after by the community group that run it. But that's more money from the district council. So was there a commensurate spent on Fakenham Community Centre? And I'll declare a non-pecuniary interest. I'll be volunteering at their beer and gin festival in 2 or 3 weeks' time. I'll be serving it, not drinking it. So I agree with Councillor West that actually We are the poor. We're the poor parts. We're not the poor people, because the only reason we're poor is because our pockets are emptied to pay for Cromer, Sheringham and North Walsham. Our towns and parishes pay for their own parks. Perhaps someone could remind me how many parks are funded by Cromer Town Council. I think the answer is something like none. Sorry, I'm actually making a statement. I'm not indulging in a debate. I'll get a punch in Judy Shaw if I want to do that. Thanks. My village of Walsingham is faced with providing a new village hall because ours burnt down a month ago. The town of Fakenham, which I represent county, actually owns all its own parks, and that's funded out their local precept. So, yeah, we put up council tax. Look at the county council. What's its funding? Education, children's services, adult social care, roads, digital infrastructure. That's why its budget £1.5 billion. That's more than 100 times what this council is doing, and it benefits the whole of Norfolk. So my ward, which is 5 separate communities, there's an influx of pilgrims, tourists, whatever you want to call them, every year. All we get is one public lavatory. So if we're going to talk about how much is done for North Norfolk, let's say how much is done for the whole of North Norfolk, and not just those little bits that it's spent on year after year after year, and fixing a wall and replacing 1 or 2 lavatories in 1 or 2 towns is not actually cutting mustard. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Hayman.
Thank you. Just a point of information, because I know there's, I mean, you'd be surprised to notice, or perhaps some of you haven't, that there's an election happening, and it does seem that there's quite an election fever in the room this evening, more so than there usually is when we're discussing setting the budget. But I think there's a point that's being made about officers and cabinet members, which needs clearing up first of all, and that is that the principal cabinet officer responsible, cabinet member responsible for budget is absent this evening, sadly, and therefore it's wholly appropriate that officers answer some of those level of detailed questions, and indeed, moreover, generally speaking, and the point has been well made previously, that when a level of detail is required in response to a question, that officers have that granular understanding of the operational issues, and they will answer those questions. I'm going to be supporting this budget this evening because I think it's a fair budget in really difficult circumstances. I sit as an independent member. I don't, because I don't belong to a party, have an opportunity to talk and respond formally, but I do think these are difficult times, and this is a fair budget. Given the constraints that this authority is under, and the fact that actually, and to some extent, because it doesn't share the political complexion of the government in Westminster at the moment, it is being unfairly punished as a consequence of that. And I think people around this room, or whatever political party they are, have to recognise that there is an injustice in the way that our local government system and the funds from central government can be used adversely to punish particular authority that don't share that political complexion. I mean, if this was happening in Ukraine or in parts of Russia or the former Soviet Union, we'd be all as one shouting that it was unfair and it's manipulation, and it is manipulation, and the people of this district are suffering as a consequence of political decisions being made elsewhere that have no understanding or no care or consideration for the impact of people and people's lives. And we know from the statistics that are produced by independent bodies around the country that actually coastal communities are some of the most deprived and the most under-resourced, with the poorest educational attainment levels, etc. The whole list of poor outcomes goes on and on. And those things need to be addressed. We can't just pretend here that this election will sweep those under the carpet. The election's coming up. These decisions have to be made, and the administration has to make a budget that's sensible within the constraints and the political situation that it finds itself in. I'd like to be able to contribute to a discussion on car parks and where we can increase revenues and income from that. And there is a car park that sits in Cromer that the district council owns, and it doesn't charge for the use of. And I think that has to stop. And that's the one that sits on the Norwich Road, which is currently being used by the tennis club. We have incumbent upon ourselves to increase revenue wherever possible. And I think that really needs to be looked at going forward, as do annual increases in car parking charges. I recently visited another part of the country down south and was charged a lot to park for the day in a municipal car park. And I understood that that was those fees were way in excess of what people get charged when they come to anywhere in the North Norfolk run district council's car parks. And I think we need to be a little bit realistic about the offer that we have here, but also the cost of that and the infrastructure. But I do want to see that balanced with some form of a discount or scheme for residents of North Norfolk, so they're not charged the same high amount that residents or that visitors coming in pay, and that money should be then shared equally across the board. So I commend this budget to you this evening, and I think we should vote as adults and to the realities of the district and the people who live here.
Thank you, Councillor Hayman. Councillor Heinrich, can I just point out that we have been going now for nearly 2 hours, and I have quite a long list of people who still want to talk. So I would suggest when we come to the part 2 council tax setting, we can either, I do think we need a break for 10 minutes because it's obvious that certain people have a need to go to have a breath of fresh air. So I'll carry on with this list. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more people wish to speak, which is, if they do their 5 minutes, that's another half an hour. So, and then we come to part 2 council tax setting. We may have to stop before that, go and have a break for 10 minutes and then come back and do council tax setting. But I will talk to Cara about that, and you may now continue. So we now go to Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be brief. I think it's just worth pointing out that the developments in North Walsham are largely as a result of a successful bid for Heritage Action Zone funding, the town being one of the most historic towns in the whole district, certainly a much longer history than Cromer and Sheringham. Is also the fact that this is the first major development in North Walsham since probably the late 1960s. The town has been neglected for decades by Tory administrations. We're finally getting some investment in the town to bring it into the 21st century. I'll say no more. Thank you.
Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, ma'am. To bring it back to numbers, which I thought budgets were all about instead of other issues. How can we be assured that the financial projections for 24, 25, etc. are sound? The net cost of services are projected to decrease, which, and my understanding is that even if inflation reduces, the costs do not. So I'm very unhappy. You're asking me to note, well, actually, you're asking me to do 2 things, approve and note in number 5, the current financial projections for the period. And I really am very uncomfortable with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you wish to reply to that one, Victoria? You want to reply?
Of course I want to reply. I wouldn't ask a question otherwise. Thank you.
Okay. Obviously, it's not a question and answer session, but members have requested. I understand we have taken advice from Treasury management advisors, economists, and that is the advice that other local authorities have also been given. Of course, there are a degree of assumptions in all of this, but that is why we have to build a robust budget, and that's what we've done here to enable us to deal with the potential challenges that are unknown. You're talking about future years ahead. There will be more work to do, Victoria, without a doubt. We can't deny that there will be more work to do to build in savings build in more income. And that is also talked of within the budget papers that you've been given this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Sarah Botikova.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think there's no one in this room that wouldn't have liked to have frozen council tax this year, particularly because of the cost of living crisis. But I think we have to actually go to one of the comments made by the leader of Norfolk County Council yesterday, since you've chosen to talk about Councillor Roper, when he said that we are grossly underfunded for what we have to do. And I couldn't agree with Andrew more, which is very unlike me to agree with Andrew Proctor, but I have to agree with him on this occasion. Sadly, you've had to increase the council tax at the county council, but you're making huge cuts to some of the most valuable services to our residents at the same time. 28 million from adult social care and 12.5 from children's services. We are not proposing a single cut for the residents of North Norfolk. And I think that is to be commended at a time when most councils are struggling to balance their budgets. And I would say also, we need to remember we get 8p in every pound at North Norfolk out of council tax, just 8p. So every pound of council tax, that's what we have to work with. Thank you.
Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, very brief. I just like to answer some of the comments made by Councillor Fitzpatrick. Simply that I sat here through 8 years of Conservative administration when not a single penny was spent in North Walsham, not a single penny, despite asking, despite coming up with issues and suggestions. So it's only right now that, you know, we've been successful in getting grant money, and we've done a much better job than the Tories ever done for North Walsham. And I'm very proud to be a member there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blathwaite.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Just to say that recently at an local IDB meetings, internal drainage board meeting, I had to vote on the budget. I found that I was the only member there to vote on the budget, and there was nobody from the other parties attending. We approved a budget increase of 10%. That was beaten down from 13%. And that's the type of inflationary pressure we have just to keep the feet dry of people's houses, so water doesn't flow through people's kitchens. And these are inflationary pressures, and we have had to bend to them. And I would just like to say I recommend this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Punchard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try and keep it brief. I was proud last September when I seconded the motion proposed by Councillor Reston trying to freeze our council tax going forward. And I realise we're in very difficult financial times and we have to make the best of what we've got. However, when I sit in my community that I represent and I see the county council investing in roads and infrastructure and social care, and I see the town council improving our parks and all the different things that they do with very little money, but fail to see what we're getting from the district council, a toilet block that's not yet finished, 9 months over date and well over budget, and supporting a wall that's falling down. I don't think that's good value for the residents that I represent, and I won't be supporting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Withington.
Thank you. In 2018, I was the chair of the North Town and Parish Forum, and I find it interesting that a whole term since I've become a district councillor, we were fighting for the retention of the second homes council tax to come into North Norfolk. We're still there. We're in the same position again, trying to fight for that, and we're going to have lost our big society, North Norfolk Sustainable Communities Fund. And we were doing fair funding review consultations to try and bring some of the fair funding review through. We're here at the end of another whole cycle, and this council has had to budget and find its way through with no certainty. And we're still in that position, which I think to have come through with balanced budgets during that period is a quite remarkable achievement, actually. And it's been a people and communities faced budget, and I'm particularly proud of that. I'm proud that we won the awards for allocation of our business funds and grants. And, you know, our staff were rightly rewarded for their efforts and success. And we are also in the top 5 in the country for the provision of affordable homes. So I think we know that's nowhere near what we need to be doing, but we are quite rightly proud of what we have achieved on that respect. And I'm pleased that this budget continues to focus on that. And if it means we have this increase and it enables us to support those communities and to support people who are living through extremely difficult times, and it supports people across the district. We have the supermarket in Wales that has started the community supermarket. We have them going across the district to Stalham as well, I understand. So I think it's important that that budget is able to continue that priority. And I am proud of this authority for taking that thing. And I would therefore be supporting the budget as well.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. I think that's the finish of members' questions. No, I'm sorry, Greg, you can't come back.
It's a point of information I'd want to ask, and I'm sorry I didn't ask it when I was talking earlier. And that is, as we've had an extraordinary occurrence this evening when a cabinet member has publicly stated that they will not support the budget for the administration for which they are a serving cabinet member, i.e. Angie Fitch-Tillett. Does that mean that she resigns her position as a cabinet member as a consequence of that? And if it isn't, and she doesn't, that doesn't happen, will she be sacked?
I think Cara can answer that one for you, Greg.
A point of information, if you're saying a point of order, then there needs to be something in the Constitution that you're relying upon, or a legal premise for it.
Well, I would have thought there was something in the Constitution without having it here in front of me that suggests that there's collective responsibility. But if there isn't, then I urge Councillor Fitz-Tillett to think about her conscience and resign her position, because it's completely untenable to take the position she has. She sat in cabinet where they discussed and brought this forward.
We're listening to a ramble now. Cut this off.
Each member votes individually on the budget.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, I now go back to Councillor Dixon, who will be invited to speak on behalf of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will be brief. On behalf of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I too welcome the presentation of a balanced budget. However, the key risks attached to it should not be underestimated, and these have been highlighted by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in their discussions. And they are 3. Number 1, heavy reliance on the long list of cost savings and income increases actually being delivered. Number 2, pay increases not exceeding 5%. And I should say that when Overview and Scrutiny did a pre-scrutiny of the budget, it stood at 2%, and it was the committee's wish to see that raised to 5%. And when all the prevailing signs are that the pay increases in the public sector are over 5%, and many claims are double and even heading towards treble that. The third risk is the forecast deficits in the medium-term financial strategy will have to be addressed in coming years, and the gap closure actions have a lead time before they deliver. Those are the 3 principal areas which were dominant in the discussions at Overview and Scrutiny. So that summarises the concerns expressed at that committee. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Nigel. Now I go to the second of the motion, Councillor Fredericks. If you'd like to speak now, you have up to 10 minutes.
I won't need 10 minutes. Thank you. First of all, again, I apologise, being a woman in menopause, you do need to go to the toilet quite frequently. So I beg the chambers. Yeah, extenuating circumstances about that. And I think we all agree that menopause is a very important issue at the moment. And there's a lot of women in this chamber that actually are going through that change in their lives and needs that support by their peers. So I would beg your forgiveness for that. Nice to have things. It's very nice to have things that you don't necessarily need. And we wouldn't necessarily need homes for the homeless. We wouldn't necessarily need temporary accommodation homes that we have to 18 homeless households are now in quality homes and not in bed and breakfast. That is a nice thing to have. I have 70 homes, homeless households in temporary accommodation. They're in bed and breakfast. Those of you with families should know what that would be like for 18 months of your life. So that's a nice thing to have. Social prescribers and community connectors, our biggest outreach force that go into the community, that talk to people, find out their needs, and then come back and go, hey, you know, this is need. How can we manage that? And work with agencies. I'm incredibly proud of that. That's a nice thing to have. Would you get rid of that? Financial inclusion officers, really proud of them. You'll see in my report how many referrals they get. Financial inclusion officers is just a term, I hate it, but it's basically officers that sort out financial problems for people. So I have a resident at the moment. He's got a social prescriber and a financial inclusion officer giving him that wraparound care because he's got Alzheimer's. He doesn't know how much money he has, who he owes, but they go out and they sort out that problem. I'm incredibly fond of that. That's a nice to have, isn't it? Would you get rid of that? Would you? The home repair service that we're tagging onto the Disabled Facilities Grant so people can get home from hospital faster. That's a nice to have. Would you get rid of that? The lift dashboard that we invested in so we can identify those families that are in crisis now and those families that are going to be in crisis in a few months' time. Then we can outreach as benefit officers, as community connectors, as social prescribers, and hold them and say, how can we help? We are continually mopping up the failures of the essential government. Every day, we are busy talking to people out on the streets and saying, what do you need? How can we help you? And finding little pots of money and pots of grants together to buy someone a fridge, to buy someone clothes, to help mend their car because they've got to get to work because they're carers. Would you get rid of that? We've been creative. We've given our amazing officers the space and time to be creative and go, hey, what do you think is needed? And let's test that. Let's model it. Let's try it. And you can see for yourself the results in the reports. How many people we're reaching out to. This council has never done that before because they've never been allowed to think about how best to use the public purse. And I am so proud of them. I'm so proud of them for dishing out all those minuscule little bits of money to support the people in North Norfolk that came down from central government. Do you know how much time that takes? How much energy and money that takes for those officers to do that and their job? So when you look at the council rise increase of a pint of beer, that's what we're asking for, a pint of beer, and I probably shouldn't talk about liquids because I might have to dash out again. But would you get rid of that? No, because if you're in this chamber and you've got a heart for community, then you would not get rid of that. That is what we are in government for. What we are in local government for is to help that person in North Norfolk. Our residents are at the heart of what we do. And if they are not at your heart, then you should not be in this chamber and you should not be standing because this is bloody hard work. And if you want to take it on with us. Don't stand there and point your finger. Help us with it. Thank you very much.
just to confirm, we're not having a break or?
But we're going to have a break once you've spoken before we take the vote.
Okay.
Which is on the.
That's
advice
fine.
of
I'll be as
our-
quick as I can.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, I don't think we've moved a lot further forward as a result of the debate. Regret that it was in some ways unpleasant. I think we could have avoided that. I will say, apart from, Councillor Hayman, I really do appreciate you've chosen to leave the party politics and address the budget itself and common sense, which I appreciated. I will also say that all cabinet members agreed to the budget proposals when they were in development. Council tax will only raise £200,000 or thereabouts, and this only goes so far to close the gap. We've certainly made some considerable savings. They are detailed. You've asked about this during the debate. What you want to see in opposition is cuts to essential services and getting rid of important assets. That is the alternative, and you've outlined it helpfully this evening. Christopher wants to see a race to the bottom of the league table. John wants to get rid of assets in Cromer. We heard from Tom, the pier is not safe in the Conservatives' hands, and we've heard that again and again. It was mentioned that we haven't been successful in getting grants compared to other authorities. Well, I mean, that's just nonsense, isn't it? We were awarded, given an award for the support to businesses during COVID. We've been given the Heritage Action Zone funding. Top 10 authorities awarded the Changing Places funding, which is delivering delivering public toilets across the district, and of course CTAP, one of only 2 authorities in the country. So Christopher, come back and prove that at some point. We look forward to your proof, but let's be optimistic where the opposition clearly cannot. We have stability, we have healthy revenues. I thank Eric for highlighting parking income, which of course enables us to keep our public toilets, our pier, and so many other assets. But we are delivering a robust budget here, fit to meet the challenges ahead, fit to address cost of living. We're maintaining our level of council tax support. And as Wendy has said, we're only taking the cost of a pint of beer. So I think this is a fair budget, and I hope that you will bring yourselves to support it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who's spoken today. It's a difficult time when we look at the budget, because we are spending residents' money. It's not just us, we're spending everybody's money, and we're trying, and I'm not speaking for the Lib Dems, I speak for everybody. We're trying to do the best for our residents. So I'm now going to, on Cara's advice, we're going to have a 10-minute break. So please be back here by 8:30. We will then vote on the recommendations as pointed out on page 127. Well, Cara said, well, okay. Do you want to take, they said they want to take the vote.
I just need a couple of minutes to check a legal point, a constitutional point before the vote. Yeah. If you remain in the chamber, then I can have a look and give some advice to the chair before the vote. I think it's possible to have a comfort break if people need a comfort break.
If
It's up
anybody
to you.
needs a comfort break, please go now quickly. Who is still out? Is that it? Is that it?
You want to check that everyone's fine? No, Matthew Taylor is fine.
We have two members who are still absent. We will give them a few minutes because they are in the facilities, so. Hmm?
Yeah, just, Madam Chair, one of those people is Penny, and we know her mobility issues, but she's out there at the moment.
Someone's going to get her.
Hopefully.
Oh, well, you can't, can you? Because, oh, yeah, I suppose you can. Penny, yeah, please. Have you all signed the signing in sheet?
No.
I haven't signed him. Good. If we don't finish, Emma, what happens if we don't finish by 9:30? What happens if we don't finish by 9:30? All right. Right. We have an hour before a curfew comes into play. Would you please sit down and we can carry on? Darling. Before we, oh look, I'm the only one who can sign. No. Are you? Before we go on, Cara wants to speak about a particular point of constitutional order.
Thank you. I've consulted the Constitution following Councillor Blathwaite's question, as this is such an important meeting, to consider where it is in the Constitution that prohibits voting where a member leaves the room. Having looked all through the Constitution, the only place that I can find it presently is within the planning code. So it may be something that could reasonably be reviewed to cover other meetings in the future. But at this time, having reviewed the Constitution, I consider that it only applies to planning meetings. And so, Chairman, you may, in the light of that advice, you may review your decision.
Yes, thank you. And apologies to those who had to leave the room. I know that there's quite a bit of sickness around at the moment. People are finding it difficult. And yes, did you wish to interrupt me?
No, I'm quite happy to wait until you finish, Chair.
Thank you. So I am reviewing my decision because obviously as Chair of Development Committee, this is very much in my mind when I'm sitting and taking the chair. But considering what's happened today and the length of this meeting, I am allowing those who have left the room to vote. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. By way of a memoir, I think the only consideration for members this evening is to examine their finances and ensure that they are up to date with their council tax, because if they vote at this juncture in the next proceedings, they will be potentially committing a criminal offence. That is, as far as I know, the only restriction applicable to this full council in terms of voting.
My understanding, and in the absence of any councillor saying otherwise, is that there is no councillor presently at this meeting who is not able to be involved in the vote.
I'm very pleased to hear that.
Thank you. Now we'll now go to the vote. This will be a recorded vote and will be taken en bloc for recommendations 1 to 9. Page 127 of your agenda. So the recommendations that, having considered the Chief Finance Officer's report on the robustness of the estimates and the adequacy of the proposed financial reserves, the following be approved. So this will be en bloc, and are you taking the vote?
I'll take
Right.
the vote.
Cara's taking the vote.
Thank you. So as mentioned, recommendations 1 to 9, 4 against or abstain. Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Bevan-Jones. Councillor Birch.
4.
Councillor Blathwaite.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor P. Butikofer.
4.
Councillor S. Butikofer.
4.
Councillor Cushing.
4.
Councillor Dixon.
4.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
4.
Councillor T. Fitzpatrick. Councillor V. Fitzpatrick. Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Gay. Councillor Grove-Jones.
4.
Councillor Hayman. Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Holiday. Councillor Kershaw.
4.
Councillor Lloyd.
4.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
4.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Penfold.
4.
Councillor Perry-Warnes. Councillor Punchard. Thank you. Councillor Rest.
4.
Councillor Spagnola.
4.
Councillor Stenton. Councillor Stockton.
4.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Toy.
4.
Councillor Varley.
4.
Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Vardy, you were accidentally crossed off. Councillor Vardy. Apologies.
You only get one vote, Eric.
Councillor Varley. 4. And Councillor Withington. So that's unanimous.
Thank you very much, everybody. We now go to the second part, council tax setting, and I'm going to invite Officer Stankley to outline the different elements.
Yes, we take paragraph 5.5 in the report, which is on page 139. There we have at 5.5A the council tax base for the whole council area of 41,086 properties. That is broken down in 5.5B by parish. So the total of the parishes comes back to that 41,086. Looking then at paragraph 5.6 on page 141. At 5.6A, the 59,015,677 is the total gross expenditure for the 23-24 year. B, 49,401,673 is the total of gross income in the budget for the year. We then take at line C, the difference between the gross income and gross expenditure gives us our net requirement for council tax of £9,614,004. And this is what we need to collect via parish precepts, parish council tax and the district element as well. And D is £233.60, and that is the average Band D amount to be collected for both the district and parish elements. And that is taking the £9,614,004 and dividing it by the total council tax base of 41,086. Line E is the parish precepts in total that have been requested for the year 23-24. And then at line F, still in paragraph 5.6, that is the council's element, the district element of council tax for the year, which is calculated by taking the parish precept of 2,875,207 and dividing it by the council tax base, and then deducting that off the £233.60. So that gives us an average parish precept council tax Band D of £69.98. And as I say, we take that off the 233.60 to give us the district element of 163.62. Point G is on the next page. Is the district council's element plus the parish element at a Band D average. So that's for each parish precept, the charge, for each parish, sorry, the amount that will be charged for council tax. The table at 5.6H gives you the breakdown across the various valuation bands that we have A to H. And then finally, moving on to paragraph 5.7, we have there the county council's element and the police and crime commissioner's element of the council tax that we will charge in total for the year, and that's broken down through the bands from A to H. And then at 5.8, that gives us the total amount that we will bill council taxpayers across the various parishes from bands A to H for the year 23-24. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Now I'm going to ask Tim as leader to propose the recommendations. And have we got a seconder for this? Did you get a seconder?
For recommendations 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm obviously happy to propose that they are accepted without further discussion, debate. Hopefully, I think we've done that bit. And Wendy had seconded. Thank you.
So it's proposed by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Fredericks. Councillor Cushing wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can we vote separately on items 11A and B, please?
We can. Is that voting separately on 10? No, just 11A and B, isn't it? Three separate votes. Okay. Right. We're going to go to the vote now. This is a recorded vote, and on Councillor Cushing's request. First of all, what's the matter? 10 first, yes. 10 first, and then councillors. Three, just said 3 votes. Yeah, I'm going potty here. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll speak up a bit louder. How about that? It is getting tiring now. So we're going to have a recorded vote on recommendation 10 as presented on page 128.
Thank you. So just for clarity, Recommendation 10 is that members undertake the council tax and statutory calculations set out at section 4 and set the council tax for 2023-24. 4 against, abstain, councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Bevan-Jones. Councillor Birch.
4.
Councillor Blathwaite. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor P. Butikofer. Councillor S. Butikofer.
4.
Councillor Cushing.
Against.
Councillor Dixon. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Against.
Councillor T. Fitzpatrick. Councillor V. Fitzpatrick. Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Gay. Councillor Grove Jones.
4.
Councillor Hayman. Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Holiday. Councillor Kershaw. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Against.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Penfold. Councillor Perry Warnes. Councillor Punchard. It's gone. Councillor Rest. Councillor Spagnola.
4.
Councillor Stenton. Councillor Stockton. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Toy.
4.
Councillor Vardy. Councillor Varley. Councillor Withington. Twenty-one for and 12 against.
It's carried. We now go to number 11. The demand on the collection fund for 2023-24 is as follows. We're voting on this separately. So Cara, over to you.
Thank you. So subsection A, 6,722,490 for district purposes.
6 million.
Million. For district purposes, Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Bevan-Jones. Councillor Birch.
4.
Councillor Blathwaite. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor P. Butikofer. Councillor S. Butikofer.
4.
Councillor Cushing.
Against.
Councillor Dixon. Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Councillor Fitzpatrick T. Councillor V. Fitzpatrick. Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Gay. Councillor Grove Jones.
4.
Councillor Hayman. Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Holiday.
Against.
Councillor Kershaw. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Against.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Penfold. Councillor Perry Warnes. Councillor Rest. Councillor Spagnola.
4.
Councillor Stenton. Councillor Stockton. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Toy.
4.
Councillor Vardy. Councillor Varley. Councillor Withington. Thank you. 21 for, 12 against.
That's carried. Thank you very much. That was a long.
We've just got one more to go.
Oh. Oh, I'm just so eager. Oh, do apologise. Right, on with the next one then.
Okay. So so this is for B 2,875,207 for parish town precepts. 4 against, abstain, Councillor Adams. Councillor Bevan-Jones. Councillor Birch.
4.
Councillor Blathwaite. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Butikofer P. Councillor S. Butikofer.
4.
Councillor Cushing.
4.
Councillor Dixon. Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Councillor T. Fitzpatrick. Councillor V. Fitzpatrick. Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Gay. Councillor Grove Jones.
4.
Councillor Hayman. Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Holiday.
4.
Councillor Kershaw. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Penfold. Councillor Perry Warnes. Councillor Rest. Councillor Spagnola.
4.
Councillor Stenton. Councillor Stockton. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Toy.
4.
Councillor Bardi.
4.
Councillor Varley. Councillor Withington. 32, 4 and 1 against.
Thank you. So that's been approved. Thank you all for that. It's a long discussion. We now pass on to the pay policy statement. This is item 12, 2023-24, and Officer Claxton are you still here?
Yes. It's myself. So
you're going to do it, are you?
we can call upon James if there are questions about this process, but obviously you're aware of sorry, excuse me, how this comes about, the national bargaining, etc. Thank James and other officers for their work in producing the pay policy statement, which I hope will not cause too much discussion. It's very straightforward, obviously, and I'm happy that I'm happy to propose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder for this? Councillor Fredericks. So are there any questions regarding pay policy? No, goodness me. Right, so we now go to the vote. This is the recommendation to adopt the attached pay policy statement and to publish the statement for 2023-24 on the council's website. I think we're just doing hands up for this one, are we not? Is that right?
Yes, there's no request for
No request, right. If you could just vote that you go with the recommendation to adopt the pay policy, will you please raise your hands?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. Portfolio reports. Now, you know what I always say about this, that I do make the assumption that you have read the portfolio reports. They are quite detailed. And members can ask one question only regarding the portfolio reports. And if there's any time at the end, then you can ask a supplementary. So over to the members. Does anybody wish to speak to on any of the cabinet's portfolio reports? Victoria. Right. Victoria first.
Thank you very much. It's a question for the portfolio holder of the environment. Can you explain how a resident came to die from leptospirosis due to extensive rat infestation in their property? Thanks.
Who's answering that one?
I'll take that.
Right.
Yeah, this was reported to me. It's a very sad case. I'm told that there was extensive rat infestation there, and ended up with a case of Vars disease. And there is the company, the council have been involved, but a commercial rat catching company is now on site and been dealing with the problem. This was brought to our attention by a resident, and we've done our best to support them, but it is a very unusual and unique case in actual fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Victor. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Just a matter of clarification on page 196 of in the agenda page, but paper agenda, in the section of conservation, design and landscape. The 2 further public hearings at Holt and Blakeney will be on the same day, on Thursday, the 9th of March. Just a point of information, Chair.
Right, thank you for that. And Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to ask Sustainable Growth, Richard Kershaw, if he could enlighten us, please, on how is the first tranche of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund being dispersed? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Pearce. We have this morning heard that the late delivery of the first tranche is actually going to be allowed to be rolled over into year two. We have received approval from the government that our investment plan has been approved. So we're now starting to work with the panel that we've convened, which includes both local MPs and stakeholders, to start working on a delivery mechanism. We have, along with other councils in Norfolk, agreed to use the LEP to distribute the money. They are working so we don't overlap, we don't cross and leave holes, and we are consulting with businesses. We've been consulting today, we'll carry on, but we only found out this morning what the terms of the fund will be. So that's where we're starting from, and we'll be running straight away. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toy.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I had exactly the same question, so it's been answered because I was concerned about the rural aspect and when that was going to be delivered. But thank you, appreciate it.
Councillor Penfold.
Yeah, thank you. Question for councillor Brown. Just on page 195, you refer to nutrient neutrality and the new joint venture company, which will provide a range of environmental credits. Could you just give us a bit more detail on how that will work for North Norfolk in getting the planning system back to normal, in deciding applications which have been affected by the nutrient neutrality constraints? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, councillor Penfold, for your question. Of various options open to us, we have decided to join with other participating district councils in forming a joint venture company with Anglian Water to invest in credits, environmental credits that we'll be able to broker and sell to developers who want to unlock sites across our district, of which at the moment there are too many. I think there are between 1,700 and 2,000 applications or even consents that have not been built out because of nutrient neutrality. What we need to work out with this scheme is, in effect, how the funds are going to be divvied up. We're putting in 30 grand to get it going first off, which I think we've had approval for from Cabinet. And we've got a distribution system which could be on a first come, first served basis. It could be allocated depending on the stage in the planning process that a particular application has reached. It could be allocating credits to applications for housing only as opposed to any other type of development, or it could be offered to minor development, allocating credits to enable smaller local builders access to mitigation to get their personal economies, as it were, moving again. Or we could give priority to affordable housing for planning proposals that exceed affordable housing policy requirements, enable proposals that comply with affordable housing policy as per the adopted local plan. So the prioritization, should I say, will be highest for minor development, as these can be delivered quickly and will support local small, medium enterprises, and screening will be undertaken to review the areas for development and where demand will arrive from. Consideration will be given to limiting the period for development implementation to avoid credit banking for joint venture credit qualifying schemes. So there is much to be done. I won't go on, given the time of the evening any further, unless anybody wishes me to, but that is where we are. So the good news is we hope in the next couple of months that we will be able to start unlocking sites in our district.
Yes, and about time too.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a question for Councillor Nigel Lloyd. One of my residents in Stalham, Catherine Scrivener, recently reported to me that over the past financial year, her brown bin was either late to be collected or fail to be collected at least 3 times. This is, of course, a service that she pays for as an extra. Now, if this was a business, you would expect the customer to be compensated if the service you offered wasn't fulfilled. I do further understand that NNDC has a mechanism to fine Serco should they not collect the bins as they should. So really, I have a 2-part question. 1, does NNDC have any plans to compensate those residents like Catherine who have not received the service they have paid for? And 2, how much has NNDC collected in fines from Serco, given the widespread disruption we have seen recently?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The payments from Serco only cut in after, if they don't collect on the day after it's been reported. So in the vast number of cases, the bins are actually emptied within that period. And that is to cater for things like a puncture or a breakdown, or even things like people going sick during the day. So I can get that. I obviously don't have that information in front of me right now, so I'm a bit surprised you could ask about me here. Probably would have been better to send me an email and I could have got you that information. So I'll have to go, I'll send you a written answer to that. But on the number of what the amount collected has been, but yeah, we're very disappointed with Serco's performance, me more than most. Tim has been on them really hard, but when you actually work out the sum of money involved, it's about, should we say, £50 a year, and for that you get a collection every 2 weeks. So if you do the sums, it works out about 50p. Now the administration costs in doing that just don't add up, and I wouldn't recommend we do that. But I'll get back to you on the on any funds we've collected on brown bins from Serco, but I don't think it's very much at all.
Matthew, are you not supposed to come back?
Am I not supposed to come back?
Oh, we'll allow you to have a.
Oh, thank you very much. No, it's just thank you. Really, it's just clarity, because I'll go back and I'll talk to Catherine tomorrow and I'll feedback what you've said to me. So the mechanism is in place there to fine Serco, but you wouldn't be in favour of compensating the resident because that amount is so small. Just pure clarity. That's the crux of what you're saying.
I think you said that, didn't you?
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah. Then Nigel will get back to you with the answers that he couldn't give you this evening. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is for Councillor Brown regarding the recently published draft National Planning Policy Framework. I understand we have to get the response in by the 3rd of March next week. Could you enlighten me on what the implications for our planning policy team are of dealing with this matter, if any? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Heinrich, for your question. Yes, this is a national planning policy framework that we've been waiting for since summer last year. It was released in December, and we are duty bound to respond to it. And there are some significant changes which will impact upon our local plan, so there will need to be some adjustments to the local plan. If the recommendations are adopted, it's broadly a positive document. The main alteration is to the housing delivery test. The methodology under that mechanism, which we're obliged to adopt unless we have valid reasons to depart from it, and we need to give robust evidence in that regard. The emphasis has actually changed slightly. The figure will be an advisory starting point rather than a mandatory figure to achieve. We have a change to planning policy in respect of supplementary planning documents. They will no longer be merely material considerations. They will actually form part of the local plan, which enables amendment to the local plan as it evolves over time. So we have that consideration to take into account. The major problem for this council is that we have spotted that there is a legacy from the white paper which tried to take local decision making away from district councils and adopt a planning process through a central, as it were, pattern book of plausible or recommended development. We don't think that that is right. We want to keep the control of our planning system and the application of policies at a local level. And that is one of the major pushbacks that we will be making in our representations back to the government at the beginning of March. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. No
thank you.
supplementary.
And I think our last question is coming from Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I should be putting brighter clothes on in future because nobody seems to see I'm here. My question.
You do rather blend into the background.
I sort of black and white, a bit like a match, really, aren't I? So,
he was wearing a lovely tie on Monday. So.
Unsurprisingly, my question is to Councillor Lloyd. Following on from your portfolio report regarding decarbonisation, are you just virtue signalling by declaring carbon neutral by 2030? Because unless we change the fuel in the waste vehicles and decarbonise all our buildings, we will never achieve it. Planting trees and changing light bulbs and 40 just won't cut it. And regarding collections, why are you not collecting textiles with the small electrical pickups, as I proposed 3 years ago? And have you costed any of this work? And how do you propose to pay for it? Thank you.
There's quite a few questions there. So I take real offence at you saying that we're virtue signalling with our carbon emergency pledge and net zero pledge 2030. I report on what we've been working on. The nature of this portfolio report is just what my team has been working on over the past months to keep people informed. I'm fully aware that changing LEDs isn't going to bring us down to net zero. That's just a ridiculous thing to say, in actual fact. There's a wide range of different aspects to this, which are very well and comprehensively written in our net zero action plan, which went through the whole council process, including scrutiny, and everybody had a chance to comment on. During that time, we did take questions on how this was going to be achieved in terms of finances. And we priced up in that report the first few years. Beyond that, it's very difficult because of inflation. Actually, at the time of the NZAP, who would have thought we'd be sitting here with 12% inflation? And so, you know, in construction, it's in some areas it's up to 25% these days. So it would be totally wrong to sit here now and say net zero 2030 is going to cost X amount of money. It's just not possible to do that. In terms of decarbonisation, all the things that you mentioned will have to be tackled. That's the nature of the game. So it's decarbonising this building. It's changing, getting away from any form of fossil fuels. If at the end, you know, it probably won't be here, but in 28, 29, a judgment will have to be taken at that point as to whether we need to consider some offsetting. Now, all our plans at the moment are so that we can get down to net zero without doing that. But and the other comment I didn't like either was about planting trees. Anybody who's read up a little bit about planting trees, the value in trees isn't just about virtue signalling, it's about well-being, health, it's about biodiversity. And actually, the trees that we planted so far will in themselves sequestrate around about 10,000 tonnes. And we're not even counting that. We took a decision not to count that from the trees, but it's just a really good thing to do. And that's why just about every organisation, from the National Trust to the Woodland Trust to charities across the country to towns, parishes, forward-thinking councils, are all planting trees. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Can I quickly come back on that? Very quickly. Just to recap. So you're not going to some of these been going for half an hour of stuff that we come out with.
Can I please just remind you, I don't think I deserve it, that we have another full council meeting next Wednesday, when we will be discussing